by 2050. It is clear that the needs and rights of people of all ages, including our older people across the Commonwealth, must be identified, discussed, and most importantly, celebrated. Because for me, this conversation is deeply personal. I only started exploring what ageing meant and what it might look like to care for someone when my mother became extremely ill at the age of 50. She required around-the-clock care at this time, and suddenly, in my 20s, I was her advocate in the Australian healthcare system. But as she got better, I realised that she would need help as she became older, when she was in her 60s, her 70s, or possibly even her 80s. I will, at this time, be an employee and a business owner. I'll be a wife and a mother, and I'll have so many other more roles, as well as caring for my mother. And plus, one of the other barriers that I will experience is that my mother is one of the population of people who move across the globe for work. She now lives over 2,000 kilometres from me in Australia. So if she chooses to stay in her current community, how will I ensure that I can care for her and support her in her current community while I continue to be a mother, a wife, and an employee? So, is this discussion personal for you as well? Are you listening to the voices of older people and what they need? Are you also giving them space to learn and share their perspectives? Because we know that women across the lifespan have ambitions, aspirations, and dreams about their future. And today we are starting this dialogue and conversation for the first time so that we can understand the intergenerational perspective of ageing from those who hope to live to an older age. Our first panel, sitting here right now, will explore this through a discussion between people at different stages of their life, highlighting what government and civil society can do to encourage a Commonwealth in which women and girls of all ages are respected and included. You may be thinking you're currently planning for retirement or possibly even in retirement yourself. Or you have older people in your lives and this conversation may be possibly a bit trivial. But we all know ageing is a privilege, and just like health, we only notice the support afforded to older people in our communities when we ourselves are in the middle of a crisis, ensuring that they get care and support that they need and deserve. So do you know where to access support? Do you know what is working well in your healthcare systems and in your social support systems, and what services are available? Do you know what is missing and what advocacy we need to make our systems better? We all plan for good health and ageing, but how are people right now working to create change in health, social and government systems to ensure older people are not left behind, but supported and cared for when they need us the most? This is a discussion that our second panel will be sharing, as these will be leaders from across the Commonwealth, people who are actively involved in fostering and promoting initiatives to help older people in their communities. So I'm just going to come over here and sit next to one of our panellists, and I'll do a short introduction for both of them. So I'd like to introduce our very first panellist, Professor Shirley Randall, who is the Ambassador of the Older Women's Network of Australia. Shirley is a global mentor, educator, trainer, change activist, ambassador, patron, and the list is endless, so I could go on. She has worked at all levels of education and women's rights in Australia, Asia, the Pacific, and Africa. Shirley is President of the Independent Scholars Association of Australia and Coordinator for International Relations, Australian Graduate Women, and she has gladly shared that she is 82 years old, has 4 children, 13 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. So welcome, Shirley. And next to her we have the wonderful Pascaline, who is part of the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. Pascaline is currently employed here as the Global Program Manager for Girl-Led Action on Climate Change Project. She is also a board member of the African Society of Association Executives, a professional community of association executives, and voice of the Professional Association here in Africa. Plus, there are many other listed volunteering roles that she also holds. So welcome, Pascaline. Thank you. So the very first question I'd like to ask, and I'll throw to you first, Shirley. What does being respected mean to you?
Thanks very much, Sam. And it's such a pleasure to be with 2 wonderful women. My first time to meet both of them. And when I mentioned I was talking to Pascaline, can you imagine my friend Claire Wakabamba said to me she is a beautiful person inside and out. So I'm really pleased to be able to be with her today. Well, what does it mean for me to be respected? And what changes have there been to me through my age? So you've already mentioned my family, and I suppose the most important thing is my family. That I am, in fact, a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, and a great-grandmother, and probably will have many more grandchildren, as many of you will as well. On my 80th birthday, my nieces and nephews as well came over from Western Australia and all over Australia to give me a happy birthday in Sydney, which was remarkable. So especially many of the young ones in my family see me as their role model, their mentor, their coach, and ask my advice about their futures. So that is the first thing, Sam, I wanted to say. Now, for me, being respected also as an older woman means to be visible, as I have been as a younger woman. Being seen and listened to, having my opinions valued and taken seriously, feeling that I have equal significance to others and that my difference as an older person is okay, and I'm a valuable part of the human family. I'm fortunate to keep having opportunities to speak, as I am at this forum, about issues relevant to me and my personal growth, to participate on committees and boards, and you've mentioned some of them, to travel, like coming to Rwanda, while my health and my mobility permit, feeling that my experience of life over decades is of great value, is acknowledged, being given time and presence with others. Now, in Australia, as they grow older, many older women tend to be invisible because of ageism. Respect for them changes. As an older woman, respect for me means that older women still have the right to be respected and an equal member of society, to live with dignity and to achieve their aspirations. Our First Nations people in Australia, women elders, elders in rural areas, older women who are poor, are often invisible, certainly treated differently as they grow older because of their age. In the Commonwealth country where I live, Australia, and I imagine most, if not all Commonwealth countries, older women have been left out as they grow older and not being respected because they suffer this double discrimination of gender and ageism. And we haven't talked enough about ageism. We talk about racism, sexism. Ageism is something also we need to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. And Pascaline, throw to you. What does respect mean to you?
Thank you, Sam. I'm so glad to be here. Just as Shirley mentioned, we've met recently, but I know her since 2011 through an email, but I still remember that. I'll talk about that later. So come back to the question. I think that everyone deserves respect. regardless your age, your race, or your ethnicity. I think that being respected means that I have the right to be appreciated and accepted just the way I am, even if I don't agree with someone else's point of view. I also think that respect comes from two perspectives, one being social and another one being individual. On the social side, I think it's the way we acknowledge that someone is as a precious human being as I am, and that they have the right of the way of living, feeling, and thinking. It's also about giving them the space to express themselves freely without being judged or imposed on the way you want them to be. I'll give an example of my previous role. I was appointed to become the executive director for Association de Guides du Rwanda. It's the largest volunteer organization for girls and young women in Rwanda, with more than 10,000 girls and young women. At that time, I was very, very young. I was very afraid, but the spirit in me asked me to take that job. I was instilled with the values, which were very basic, like respect, loyalty, honesty, transparency, and accountability. And I took it very seriously, but I'm so glad that I took it. One, because it equipped me with the skills and the competences that I have today. And I'm glad that I met people that influenced or motivated me to be who I am today. I wasn't imposed by other people's opinions. Everywhere I walked in the rooms, there were people who were older than me, but I appreciated that I wasn't influenced or imposed by the things that they wanted me to do. They rather trained me, they prioritized my opinions, and here I am. So that was 5 years ago, and that led to the current role that I have today. So I believe that being respected for me as a young woman is giving the young people to excel, to give them the space to express themselves freely, to understand their opinions, but because they have a lot to give. I also think that respect doesn't come from one way. It also comes from my own individual spirit. Sometimes I feel that respect can be earned by taking my role seriously, so that my commitments are achieved. So if I fail because of my lack of discipline, if I don't show commitments, if I don't have goals, if I don't listen to the elders, I don't think that I will instill that into others, and I will eventually lose my respect from others. Yeah, and I also believe that respect comes from one's being humble, because if you don't humble yourself before others, then you cannot expect you to be respected in the future. And this is shown in small acts like giving a seat to elderly, thanking someone, listen to people. I think those small acts lead to the way people respect you, and I think that in the future that comes back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascaline. I loved how you shared around how all ages supported you across your career, and I'm sure, Shirley, you've experienced that as well, and you're both giving back in your own way in that sense. So part of this panel is to show that older women are visible and they're achieving so much, because I know, Shirley, you recently did release a book. So what are your future goals, and what do you want to achieve in your life? You have so much more left in your life.
Thank you, Sam. Well, my mother lived till she was 95 years, so that is my goal, that I will live to be that age too. My family want me to do that as well. And I want to be financially independent, and so far I am, because I was able to save money to put away for a pension on retirement, although not as much as men put away, I have to tell you, in Australia. And I want to be able to enjoy good health in my 90s. I will need to have more surgeries. Some of you have noticed that I have been using a walker because I have a new knee. They took away the old one that was infected with osteoarthritis. So I have one new knee, I possibly will have to have another one. So that's a problem of aging, of course, and I will have to have more surgery. My next future goal is again related to my family, especially the younger ones, to give back to them, to continue to be visible and available to them for loving companionship and mentoring them on their studies, their work and their lives. I aim to maintain a special relationship through intergenerational activities and experiences with my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren and the great-grandchildren still to be born. And my goal is to leave them my legacy. My third goal is to keep in touch with a great number of friends I have, many of you here, because I've gained so many friends through my work in the Pacific and in Asia and in Africa, especially in Rwanda, where I lived for nearly 10 years. So I want to connect with newsletters, with emails, and coming to Rwanda. I want to continue my mentoring and acting as a referee to young people to be a good example to them. And I also want to continue to contribute to the Centre of Gender Studies at the University of Rwanda. And so many people here I have met who are graduates now of that institute that I founded back in 2009. And you mentioned my book, Sam, so I'm going to show you, at the request of our common age delegate here, who has suggested I put it up here. Now, this book is in the Public Library of Rwanda. It's a digitalised book, so you can go there at any time and read it, or you can download it on the internet. We have very few copies. This is a copy for the Commonwealth Secretariat.
Thank you, Shirley.
But I do want to continue writing. So my final goal is to continue my work as a volunteer for the National Older Women's Network and as Ambassador to Dignity. That's a voluntary organisation for homeless people in Australia, many of whom are old. And to continue my unpaid work as an ambassador, a board member, a speaker on gender, on older people and on homeless issues, and to contribute to my society in whatever way I can. To continue to nourish and help myself and nourish and help those around me, and to be a supportive and loving friend and community member. So I wish to be involved still with my near neighbourhood and my further community of Australia and a global influence. I want never to stop learning and being involved in meaningful activities.
Definitely sounds like you have a lot more to achieve.
Yeah.
And Pascaline, I throw to you for a similar question. You have a long career ahead of you as well. So what are your future goals?
I wish I had the same with Shirley, but they are pretty similar, and I would say that she inspired me some times back. About the email she sent me, I presented somewhere at the UN, and she sent me a congratulatory email without knowing me, and she encouraged me to keep studying, which I continued to do until I got my master's in 2018, and I'm a proud alumni of her school. I did gender studies at the Center of Gender Studies, and I graduated in 2018, so I'm so glad to meet you again. And one of the things that she challenged me again when I met her a week ago was to further my studies and do the PhD. So I didn't have that plan.
It's a big plan, PhD.
It is. I didn't think about it, but when she told me about that, I said, why not? So that's one of my goals this year. I'm going to start searching of what I want to study. And I hope that one day I will tell you that I graduated.
Well done.
Yes. And the second goal that I have, of course, last year I got the new employment. I wanted to make impact at the global level by impacting girls and young women at the large scale. So today I lead the Girl-Led Action on Climate Change program, and I would keep I would like to keep impacting girls by educating them on climate resilience, because this is one of the biggest issues we have in the world. And part of the things that she also mentioned is financial stability. We need money. I need money. I need to be financially stable when I grow up, when I grow older, when I grow.
I think all of us need to grow up in our own way.
Oh yes, I am still young. Yesterday we attended a session organized by Sindagiza, and there was one great quote they shared with us, that we are not becoming older, we are becoming classic. So, Shirley, you are not old, you are a classic. And that's where I'm heading. So I would like to build my income streaming, not relying on one job. So I would like to start a company one day. I have a background in journalism and communication, and one of the issues I'm passionate about is journalism and communication. So I would like to start that firm, maybe in 2-3 years. And I would also want to contribute to the bigger society by giving the opportunity to fresh graduates the opportunity to exercise what they acquire at school, so that they can be able to compete at the labor market. Lastly, I am single. I want to start a family soon.
All excellent goals. And I definitely love how both of you touched on financial independence. And that's definitely something that a lot of women, we all need to support each other in achieving, and have so much action in our communities and in our workplace to help each other achieve that goal. So Pascaline, with the goals that you just shared, what changes would you like to see in the world to help you to achieve these, and also to help you as you grow older?
One of the things that I would like to see changed, particularly in my country, is a better health care for the elderly, by, for instance, setting up infrastructure or centers that can provide palliative care. And then I would like the age preparedness to start or to grow. We have started, we are heading there, but it's still in the first phases. So I would like this to change, especially for women that work in informal sectors, so that when they grow older, they will have something to support them. And lastly, I would like to see more intergenerational dialogues like this happening across the country, not from the national level, but also from the grassroots level. Yeah, because we will not go anywhere without the elders, and they maybe learn from us. So I would like to see these platforms created and growing bigger and bigger, so that the legacy can continue to thrive.
I love that. That's one of the things that I love seeing, is younger people being involved in discussions that benefit all of our generations as we grow older, and particularly being focused on how we can support older adults, because particularly in Australia, that's not something that's regularly seen. So it's wonderful to hear you say that as well. Shirley, what changes do you wish were made today to help you and also other older people?
So that's the next one. You've missed me. Okay. Well, our purpose in this intergenerational celebration is to advance the interests of older people through building capacity in health and care services throughout the Commonwealth. And one of the changes I wish to be made today is for the Commonwealth and for all of its institutions to pay attention to older people and intergenerational activities. So one of the changes I wish to make is to recognise ageism in the same way, as I said before, as we've recognised sexism and racism, and to identify it and to call it out and to introduce laws that convict perpetrators of violence against older people. We know that older women, in particular in older people's institutions, suffer a great deal of discrimination. This is so in Australia. I don't think you have institutions here yet for older people, but certainly we have quite a lot in Australia. And I'm really keen that there should be a network of connected people, including young people, on a journey supporting the staff in older people's facilities and working with them to ensure that older people have justice in those institutions. The pandemic shone a light on just how challenging it was in older people's institutions in Australia and in other countries of the world. And it's important to ensure that all older women can get the respect and care services that they need as they grow old. I wish for every generation to work together to build a future that we can grow old in. And finally, I wish for more platforms for intergenerational dialogue like this one today, where we can share experiences in the whole journey of life. Young people have a lot to give in this digital era, and we can start in schools, where children can write books and of their experiences and help their elders to write books in a digital form. So there's a lot that can still be done on that issue.
Thank you. Very well said, Shirley. Very well said. And some of the work that I do in Australia is around ensuring that younger people see themselves as part of the conversations, and that how their careers, be it in accounting, in law, in caregiving, in any civil society role, how they can be part of the conversations because they themselves will one day be older. So what ideas do you have to catalyse more intergenerational communication and action in your countries?
Thank you. The first one is that establishment of intergenerational dialogues. I would like to see them grow bigger and starting from grassroots level to the national level, as I mentioned. But there is also one thing that I would like to encourage older people maybe to do, which will leave the legacy, is writing books, like these ones that Shirley is exposing here, but she also has others. We have many books, but I don't think they are enough, especially because of the history of Rwanda, the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We would like young people and young generations to come to know the resilience of older people that made us who we are today, that gave us the country that we have today. So I would like to encourage older people to start writing. They might not have the capacity of writing, but if you call a younger person, they can write the story for you, and you will be educating them. They can also make the book available and accessible, either digitally or manually. So on top of those two, I think these conversations are really important to keep the legacy going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Shirley?
Well, we are celebrating here. Yes, thank you. That was great, Pascaline. We're celebrating this wonderful opportunity of the Commonwealth bringing older women together in this Chogam Women's Forum and sharing together both our lived experience and our professional experience, both what's positive and what needs to change. So more forums like this are needed. We do live in a multi-generational world, and we need to include both older and younger people in community forums, in discussion forums, in decision-making forums, and globally, regionally, and in our own countries. We can all share in intergenerational relationships. And I think we should start where the Commonwealth is, to seek models in other Commonwealth countries with funding by Commonwealth institutions for elders and youth to be jointly involved. We have a very good example where Australia has taken an example from the UK about older people speaking to 4-year-olds, and we have this wonderful television program of older people from aged institutions talking to preschool 4-year-olds. It's fantastic. And sharing that notion is really important. And we need funding from Commonwealth institutions for elders and youth to be jointly involved. Why is there nothing written in the work of the Commonwealth that includes older people, when we know that the older age group will increase by 142% by 2025? In Australia, there's a problem with many older women retiring into poverty and homelessness. And First Nation elders in Australia have given us some amazing role models about preventing COVID entering their isolated communities during the pandemic. But because of ageism, we know that not everyone, and including our First Nations people, are given the respect they deserve. They need to continue to have agency through cultural respect of elders. Again, I want to finish by calling again on the Commonwealth explicitly to recognise older people as contributors to Commonwealth mission, and suggest that the Commonwealth's institutions include older people's needs and rights in their work, because increasing contact between younger generations and older people, especially with pensioners in aged care villages and institutions, could increase intergenerational activities. Older people can mix with young people in their field or interests. For example, an older person can coach a sports team in their area of sport. They could mentor a young person. They could offer to babysit or to take grandchildren to one activity every week, or to read stories in their local preschool. So there's a great deal that we can do, and I do hope that through this Commonwealth Forum today on intergenerational celebration, that we do have the Commonwealth picking up more carefully and vigorously intergenerational work. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley, and thank you so much, Pascaline. I love, obviously, everything that you have said, and I do call on all of us to have the conversations with our colleagues, other people in this room, and with all the Commonwealth people here at the Women's Forum to discuss how all of us are part of creating solutions for older adults and all people. And we'll have questions at the very end, so we'll have one more panel, and then we will call out for all for more questions and comments. So I will like to invite our second panel up, and Shirley and Pascaline, please do feel free to stay seated. So I'd like to welcome Francis, who is the Executive Director of Community Development Volunteers for Technical Assistance in Cameroon. Francis is a leading elder care crusader with 22 years' experience in Cameroon. He is the founder and a leading elder care leader who is recognised 2 times by the President of Cameroon, who promoted him 2 times, first to the rank of the Knight of Cameroon's Order of Valour, and again this year he was raised to the Officer of Cameroon Order of Valour. So welcome, Francis. Please, or panellists, please do come up now as I call you out. So we have Rihanna Patterson, who is part of the Dominica Dementia Foundation. Rihanna shared her story and contributes to events across the Caribbean, UK and the USA. She received a Queen's Young Leaders Award in 2017 for her work to help to ease the impact of dementia which it has on individuals and families. She established Dominica Dementia, which holds support groups and provides financial assistance for people who have a relative living with the condition. We also have Sarah Lambert from Save Elders Tanzania. Sarah is a research and project consultant with 5 years' experience in working with various donor-funded projects in Tanzania. In 2016, she initiated a movement to support the livelihood of older people in Tanzania, which is greatly supported by the young people across her country. We have Dr. Ozzy Ogbu, Treasurer of the Geriatric Association of Nigeria. She is a pioneer geriatrician in Nigeria, contributing to the well-being of older adults. Dr. OG has made great contributions as a member of the Technical Working Group on Ageing in Nigeria, involved in policy document reviews, hearing on bills regarding older persons, stakeholder agreements with relevant government ministries, agencies, all to promote age friendliness in her country. So welcome to our second panellists. Wonderful to have you. The very first question I would like to know is, from you personally, what is it that drew you to your work in this ageing field? And I'll start with you, Francis.
Okay, thank you very much, Samantha. Before I begin, I would like to, first of all, thank the Commonwealth and the Women's Forum for including older people's activities and actions in this forum. I'd like to also thank Shirley for bringing blessings to this occasion. at your age at 82, you continue to show a lot of exchanges and the glory of your blessings to us. Thank you very much. So, many years ago, I was born into a polygamous family of 3 wives, and my mother was the first wife to my father. At the age of about 66, my father died, and my mother lost every property to the families of my parents, because in our tradition, our sons and daughters are not allowed to succeed the property of our fathers if they die. And so, having been to the seminary, and I learned that all men are the same, both women and men, I didn't seem to understand how my mother, who had spent all these years with her husband, with the other co-wives, could simply just lose landed property, including every right to succession, because she had lost her husband. I brought together a number of women who would start promoting and fighting for the rights and seeking for their entitlements. Of course, it was not easy, because the institutional social laws, norms and values that bring about barriers that prevent women from accessing their rights and gaining their entitlements was normally made by traditional rulers, elders who are men, and of course, notables and important opinion leaders in the society. Engaging traditional rulers and men in this conversation, seemingly with time and meaningfully, transform what had become an ordinary conversation into a conversation that was extraordinary, that ignited curiosity in the general society, and they started looking at women, more importantly, just like Shirley today, as a blessing in society.
Thank you, Francis. Wonderful. It's so interesting to hear how that personal story has led you to your work today. So thank you so much. Rihanna.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to thank Common Age for putting me at the forefront of this discussion. I think it's a pleasure to join my colleagues to champion this cause and celebrate aging and celebrate older people, because we don't always get these opportunities to do this on this grand scale. So I was inspired to get into dementia advocacy as my grandfather passed away with dementia when I was 16. And I must tell you, it's something like I've never experienced before in my life. It was my grandfather, and we lived with my grandmother, my mother, and I've known him all my life. He was like a father figure to me. So when he got dementia, and it was so progressive, none of us saw it coming. And we were unprepared, we were scared, we were frightened, we were emotional, and we were just at our wits' end with it. He was back and forth in the hospital, back and forth at home, and it came to a point where he forgot who he was. He forgot who I was, his wife, who he married and known almost all his life. And I thought it was so strange how the brain works, how we can forget our loved ones and even ourselves sometimes, you know, even small things that we take for granted about going from one room to the next, or even just this panel. Someone with dementia might not remember tomorrow or in 2-3 seconds because of, you know, the kind of impact it has. So it kind of led me to further my studies in understanding mental health and understanding older people. And then I founded the Dominica Dementia Foundation at the age of 18 to channel a community of dementia advocates in Dominica, young and old, working together to celebrate, to advocate, to liaise with the government. And currently, right now, our greatest achievement, I would say, is we're working with the government of Dominica, the Ministry of Health, to activate the National Plan for Dementia. It is needed, and all the governments are called on by 2026 to have a national plan for dementia. But at the very first point, it's my grandfather who channeled me, who pushed me, who inspired me to take on this kind of advocacy work. And I thank him, and I hope that I can continue on his legacy in channeling this cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Rihanna. And Sarah, what drew you to your work for Save Elders Tanzania?
Thank you very much. I would like to, first of all, I'm so happy to be here. And I'm very happy because I just heard about the story about older people being one of the main agenda here today. And most of us, we had discussion on this. So I would like to thank Common Age Association for trusting me, but Commonwealth and Commonwealth Women Forum for inviting me. So Elders Tanzania is a youth-based program supporting older people. It has ups and downs, but I never quit. I have 6 years experience working with older people, but I have 6 years experience mobilizing young people to help older people. So you have a lot of interesting story, but I think because of time, let me share a little bit on what's driving me toward this. So I don't have much on family stories relevant to me helping older people because my grandpa and my grandma, they don't need much assistance. But it's just something called self-driven, and I feel like I want to give it back to community. I'm a Christian, and I have this leadership character. I have this leadership or charismatic leader. Since I was in school, my first degree, my second degree, I had this leadership position, being a classier or any. So from there, I feel like I want just to give it back to community, and I was studying this community work and project studies. So I feel like I want to give it back to community, but in a very unique way. So I found like most of young people of my age, they're very interesting to work with, if not children's, groups of women's, people with disability, etc. But very few, they're very interesting to work with older people. And the main concern is like, working with older people to get fund, But for me, I see blessing within it. That's all.
Thank you. And it's very common from my experience in Australia, for young people to have the family experiences, and also there are those that have that need and that want and desire to give back to the elders in their community and the older people that surround them, because they see that there is a need as well. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Dr. OG.
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's actually my first time in Kigali, my first time in the Commonwealth meeting, and it's exciting that the very first time aging issues are brought to the fore. I'm actually part of that panel. I really thank Common Age for this opportunity. But I must also congratulate you all for being here, because it means that our rival parallel session doesn't have this group. I know some of you had asked questions about what's this intergenerational celebration about. I hope that at the end of it, you would actually have learned one or two things, and you will become advocates for us all to curb ageism in the world. So my journey with geriatrics, I'm a geriatric medicine practitioner. During my training at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center in Pittsburgh, on the medical floors, 80–90% of our patients were older adults. When we say older adults, we're referring to those 60 and above. So in Pittsburgh, we joke about the fact that Pittsburgh has the second largest population of older adults, second to Florida, where we actually think they're the same group of people. Summer, they're in Pittsburgh, and when it's winter, they all go back to Florida. So that was really what had gotten me interested in geriatric practice. Plus, geriatrics was not a subspecialty of medicine that I had been exposed to as a medical student in Nigeria. So I found that very attractive, and I haven't regretted any bit of it. I returned back to Nigeria after my training, and I was very lonely. It was a very lonely space. My colleagues didn't think I would have much to do. Geriatrics, what is there to do? And the same loneliness that I felt, which, by the way, has sort of changed over the years, thank God, my patients, this cohort of older adults, tend to feel on a regular basis. And we all have that chance to change that by giving them an opportunity to have a voice, making sure that we overcome and curb ageism. Simply put, ageism is just those prejudices, the discrimination that we put, the barriers that we put towards people just because of their age. Everyone has a right, whether you're the child who's born today or the 95-year-old, like Shirley's mom, we all have a right. And there should be enough space on the table for everyone so that we can overcome ageism. Thank you.
Thank you. And as you can see, everyone has vastly different experiences that have drawn them to this space. And as their countries as well, all have different experiences and different situations regarding the rights and needs of older women in their country. So Sarah, would you be able to describe and let us briefly know about the rights and the rights of older women in Tanzania?
Okay, thank you again, moderator. So in case of my country, Tanzania, there is a lot of effort being made by the government right now. And when we talk about women's rights, we talk about everything. Being a woman, it's one, but being an older woman, it's a second thing. Most of these older women, they are facing issues of neglect and abuse, and many times happen in our families and societies. And the problem is, older women, they cannot fight back. So that's the difference between being a woman and being an older woman. You know, being a woman, at least you can try and fight it back, but for an older woman, most of them, they cannot fight back, and they feel harassed. Because what if you had the cases like an older woman being raped? Many times it's hard for them to share to their neighbors or to their children because they feel harassed. So many times, in case of Tanzania, we young people, Elders Tanzania, we are working hardly to advocate on issues of older people, to do the younger people that we have, but we use mainly the social media platform. So we are much on social media, and we emphasize community role because government role is there and it's done and it's perfect. But when it comes to community role, yet, because we are the one who involved on this neglect and abuse. But the government, it might take long to notice them because we have to report them. But who will report if you are the one who fully involved on that? So we have a lot of things concerning older women in Tanzania, but mainly it's happened because of us, because of the community we are living in, because of the younger generation. And younger generation are being fully involved on this because they are the one who are so exposed to information. So they might even hiding information to their granny, to their people they are living with, so that they can earn the wealth that they have been inherited from their husband or from their late husband. So when it comes to government in Tanzania, it's perfect. But when it comes to community role, community itself, neighbors, younger people, we still have issues. So for us, we do advocacy on social media to emphasize everybody's role to make sure he or she looks after granny. We don't have too many homes for grandparents. We don't have too many homes. We just have few, but it's government. But for us as Elders Tanzania, we don't promote. And we don't even promote people the government or private people to have this home because we have people who are able to handle their parents. When you show them like you are able to support and build them their home, they always deteriorate their role and say, this organization is there, it will help my grandma, why me again? So let them do the role by themselves, let them be responsible. We don't need, everybody should play a role, not just few of us, but if you are there, you are living in that community, and you find a grandma around your community, she has an improved toilet, why don't you mobilize your friends to build her a better one? So it's your role, yes.
So it sounds like so much of your role is not only engaging your community and the younger people, but also ensuring that they have the knowledge around what services and supports your government has available and ensuring that older people are protected. So thank you so much. Rihanna, can you tell us about the rights and needs of older women in your country, in Dominica?
Sure. So I would say there's no known health equalities that I know of in terms of education or women in the workplace or women leadership. However, with health, I think we are lacking in terms of women who contract HIV. There's still a taboo. In my country, they would call women, salopte or salop in Creole, which means slut. So there is definitely shame in that, and I think we do need to change the narrative, and we need to have healthy conversations, and we need to make women feel safe about disclosing issues that affect us. I would also say that there is a respect when it comes to Caribbean older people with the young people, because let's say a young person is passing by older person, they will say good morning, good afternoon, and they would call people ma'am or miss, with the teachers and seniority and all the women. So there is definitely a strong cultural context when it comes to respect of older women. And then with my organization, Dominica Dementia Foundation, we also have a dementia support network. And unintentionally, it's 100% female-focused, female-led. I wonder why that's the case, but however, naturally that has happened, and we have families in the UK of Dominican heritage and families in Dominica who come together and share resources and share insights and share knowledge and really bank on each other for emotional support. And we've seen a very high case of women coming to the support network, especially during COVID-19. And I think one of the reasons is because a lot of these women, they do have jobs, 9 to 5s, as you know, and then they have other responsibilities on that. We wear many hats. We are the breadwinners, we're the business leaders, we are the moms, we are the I guess cuddle buddies, or to say, and we just hold a lot of things, we have a lot of things going on. And in that way, we had women who are holding all these hats, and they also have to take care of their grandmother or their grandfather or some other relative, and it was just too much for them. And I think there is definitely a strong need to support women, female carers in this industry, because it is quite a lot. And because we are strong women, we're empowered women, people think they can just throw things on us and we'll take it, but we're not going to take it anymore. We are strong, but that doesn't mean that we always need to be strong. We are vulnerable as well, and we need people to support us. We need the men to support us. We need women to support each other. We need to bring on that dialogue, because a lot of the time we talk about men and women supporting men, but we need to also talk about women supporting women. And I think we see that a lot in this forum as well, which is quite exciting to see. But there is definitely a strong need to support carers in that aspect. I would also like to mention a couple organizations in Dominica that are really championing on and advocating women, such as Leve Dominique, which means in Patois, in English it means Stand Up Dominica, so stand up for women. And they're very strong advocates for women who are facing gender-based violence. We also have the Gender Bureau of Dominica, who are very heavy, strong in terms of addressing gender-based violence. It's a very topical issue in Dominica, and we see a lot of women quite, I guess, scared in that issue, in that regard. And we have older women who have dementia becoming wanderers. And can you imagine a woman and also having dementia, and then you wonder, and then some man says, oh, okay, she's very vulnerable, so let me go ahead after her. So we really do need to tackle this at all angles. And I think it's definitely an area that we don't really speak about, but we need to start bringing that up to the forefront, because these issues happen, and they're real, and we need support in those regards as well. We also have the Dominica Council of Women, who are also quite active, as well as Lifeline Ministries. And when I was in Dominica, I was actually a victim supporter. And I can tell you, these women hold these stories for years and years and years, and they need healing. And there is definitely a need to support women who have been raped, because it doesn't go away in 2 seconds. It really doesn't. These things go on for the test of time. So we need to really support women who have been sexually abused, especially in Dominica. I would also speak on that as well. So to end, I would also say there is a need for social well-being in Dominica. I'm sure there is also a need for social well-being in other countries as well. There is not really a recreational, I guess, building that you can go to in terms of finding friends and finding new activities to do as an older women. So there is also a need for that. And as I close, I would also say that there's a need for supporting older women in the workplace in terms of menopause leave or even grandparents leave. Has anyone even heard of grandparents leave? This needs to be a thing, because grandparents, sometimes you find that they work up until retirement and they've got grandchildren, and of course, all of what we're doing is quite important, but nothing is more important than family. And we all want to spend time with our families. So I think we need to, support grandparents who just want to spend the rest of their days with their grandchildren and the ones that they love. So please help in all aspects that I've mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd love to hear also in Nigeria. Do you have similar experiences to Tanzania or Dominica? What's it like over in your country, Dr. Oji?
Very, very similar. So the Constitution of Nigeria makes provision for the protection of every citizen regardless of age, geographical location, and gender. So at that level, we all have the same rights. But when you come down to the communities, that's actually all the daily practice. We don't see that. The common thing that a lot of older people say to me when I ask them questions about what do you think the government should be doing for you is, oh, government, nobody cares for us. So we need to change that thinking for them. Their needs are not that many, they're quite basic. Because when I would even ask, okay, if we would get back into the conversation, they're talking about electricity, they're talking about water, and these are so basic things. They're not even thinking further about what specific needs there are to their cohort. If we look at Shirley, if you don't mind, I'll make you my index case. Shirley is 82, and she's able to continue to contribute. She's here as a panelist and has told us a lot about what she's doing. She continues to do, and she wants to do more. Why is that possible, and how is that possible? Because she's aging well. The WHO gives us this tenets or guidelines for healthy aging. For us to describe you as aging well, you can move with or without an assistive device. You can continue to engage and contribute to society. Vision is preserved, hearing is preserved with or without assistive devices. There are communities where there are women like Shirley who cannot be here today because A, they don't have an assistive device that would get them into this hall, or B, we are in an environment where there are no ramps, no rails to even allow someone who's using a walker to get in. That already is ageism, that already excludes or discriminates against such people. And that brings me to that intersection of ageism, gender, and disability. So when you have a woman in those, that has those three in existence, that's a triple jeopardy. And Shirley's telling us about the fact that we're talking more about sexism, racism. We really need to make a lot of noise about ageism. And if you could just take a minute to reflect on how even you, all of us here, might have at one point in time within our interpersonal relations or connection with older people have really discriminated against them. Is it the way we talk down to them? Is it the way we shun them because we think our face is wrinkled, clothes are not clean, and all of that? We are all guilty one way or the other about ageism, and we really need to overcome that. So a lot of their rights are violated, the lack of respect, right to good health care. So I told you about being lonely when I returned to Nigeria. I didn't find other geriatricians around, and even today we have less than a dozen geriatricians in the country, where we have 216 million people, and close to 15 million of those being 60 and over. If you do the math, a dozen to 15 million, that's really skewed ratio. So there's a dearth of capacity to provide the need of our older adults. Older adults need care in different settings, in the acute care setting in the hospital, home-based setting, palliative care, I think Pascaline mentioned that, long-term care facilities, and we have not enough capacity to be able to provide the care in all of those settings. So we really need to think about how do we get more of our healthcare workforce trained on geriatric issues? How do we get geriatric into the curriculum of medical students, physiotherapists, nurses, pharmacists, because these social workers, these are all the disciplines that we require to provide geriatric care. Is multidisciplinary. So there's so much that we need to do to be able to meet the needs of these older adults and make sure that the health care for them is of good quality, is accessible, it's affordable. So affordability brings me to the issue of health insurance. We must think about health insurance. For us to achieve universal health care, we cannot leave the older ones behind. And the benefit of longevity for any community, for any society, can only be harnessed if we keep those older people as healthy as possible and make them live as independently as possible, give them a platform to continue to contribute as they desire to do.
And I 100% agree with ensuring that we have the workforce to support our older adults. As we previously stated, an increase of 142% by 2050. If we are not advocating and supporting all ages to see how they can be part of policy development, healthcare, building design, as well as our civic spaces. Every one of you has a space in your workplace policies, to advocate and ensure that older adults are included. Yes.
Yes, I've relayed the problem, but Nigeria actually has gone a step further. For healthy aging, WHO requires that every country should have a policy, a national policy on aging. And in 2020, we actually had our government approve our national policy on aging. And that policy is a roadmap for us to actually cater to all the needs of older adults. Secondly, there was an act of parliament in 2018 to establish the National Senior Citizen Center, NSCC for short, and that again has been approved by, has been accented to law by the current president. So we have a roadmap, and we now have what we might describe as a commission whose mandate is really to use that roadmap to cater to the needs of older adults. And I can tell you that the NSCC has hit the ground running, trying to make sure that we have improved livelihood for our older adults.
Thank you. And I'll just go to the next question, which will be for Francis. What impact does improving the lives of older women have on the people around them? You alluded to this when we asked what brought you to your role in supporting older adults, but I'd love to hear more from you.
First of all, I would like to say that I'm very happy to be in the presence of, in a women's forum, in the presence of women. And I'd like to say that older women have enormous duties and contributions, not just within the family, but within the community and in the country as a whole. Let's look at one thing. We are talking about intergenerational linkages, network exchanges for shared learning. Every woman has taken a risk for humanity. We are all born of a woman. Imagine the suffering that a woman goes through just to have a baby for 9 months. When the child is born, the socialization process, the nurturing process is done more by her breastfeeding, going to the farm, looking for what the family has to depend on. In the later course of her life, and I speak for those who are from the informal society, for those who are at the grassroots, and I'd like here to thank our sister who spoke a lot about people, women at the grassroots, older people at the grassroots. Now, these older women at the grassroots worked in the informal sector. They don't have any pension on their retirement. They don't have neither a non-contributory or contributory pension to themselves, and they need care. They have spent all of their lives looking after the members of their family. And we notice that even at old age, they continue to care for grandchildren. They continue to care for sick family members. They continue to provide the blessings. I think each and every one of us here present go back to our grandmothers because we want one blessing or the other. There is absolutely no difference. Director General, Minister, politician, policymaker, we all go back to our communities to ask for blessings from our grandparents. This is to say that they are a monumental treasure. They are a canopy of wisdom. They contribute both to the socio-economic, to the social, and to the cultural advancement of society. In the case of Cameroon, our government has in their constitution that family members have the responsibility to look after their older family members. Later on, and I would like to say that the involvement of international and national actors, and here I really want to congratulate the efforts of the Common Age Association for Aging, for preaching the word of care for older people across the Commonwealth of Nations. I also want to meaningfully recognize the work and contributions of Help Age International, because it is thanks to Help Age that the visibility for the promotion, the protection of the rights of older people were upheld, advanced, and held in high esteem in Cameroon. So much so that the Cameroon government started thinking on how to integrate this new concept of care for older people into our system, which was more or less translated from the locally led community traditional structures into the existing structures in the country. In 2005, our government then transformed the Ministry of Social Affairs, creating a department for the elderly. And the doctrine continuously was going on as we mainstream aging. We mainstream the activities of older persons. In 2012, our government was able to validate a national policy in the protection of the rights of older persons. Here about national policy, I would like to say one thing. Validating a national policy by policymakers and senior government officials is one thing. Putting this policy into concrete use is another. Therefore, as we stand here to continue to protect the rights of older people, let's remember that those older people who are the grassroots, who are the base of our society, who constitute the majority of the blessings that we need our society, need protection. Therefore, our policies have got to be translated. These policies must be supported by the government, by the international community, so that we can increase the visibility of what is happening in society in care of the elderly. Now, one thing that I also thought should be mentioned in the Women's Forum is that actually some of the barriers that prevent women, and particularly older women, in some communities from accessing their rights and entitlements, some of the traditional institutional laws, norms and values that do not seem to protect the rights of older people. And some of these are under traditional institutions that are headed by traditional rulers. So I would want to maybe request that in future, our traditional rulers should also be involved in conversations that concern women. Because in traditional Africa, we know they marry as many women as possible. Child marriages are promoted within these institutions, and they don't believe a lot in the education of the girl child. And so if we have to ensure active aging that has to do with a future that is independently, economically independent, and a future that will be self-fulfilling with dignity for older people, a future that will be much better than the one my mother is enjoying because she never went to school, we must have to ensure that the girl child is educated so that she can become more educated and be economically independent. In the end, she will be able to enhance and continue to share her skills and independently support herself and her family, like Shirley is doing, passing down skills like to Pascaline, and things are changing. I believe, and I want to conclude here to say that the history of care for older persons, to me, is a history of idealism. It's a history that is rich in its tradition and culture. It's a history that goes to state that we must bring our voices together and support older people and support older women. If we do not do this, this education will not be able to go wide and far, so that there's more involvement in enabling them to be frontline campaigners in their unchanging process. They have to make informed choices. And so to me, for those of us who come together who really do care, we can be able to put our voices together and help to uphold and advance the norms and values that protect our older women, and particularly those that protect the education of our women. Thank you very much.
Well said, Francis. Thank you. I'm going to throw to you, Sarah. Why do you think it's important for younger people from the 20s, their teens, and even younger to be part of the discussions around older adults, the activities that support them, and also calls for change?
Okay, before going direct to that question, let me get back quickly, because I speak very quickly. So let me get back a bit. Elders Tanzania is the program that I initiate. We are not that gender sensitive, but we are focusing on supporting older people who are vulnerable, and we are working close with local government or local authority. But a week before I got my invitation to attend this Women Forum, I go back to cross-check on our checklists, and I try to view between the number of older women and older men that have been helped by our projects. And unfortunately, I found older women's, they're greater compared to older men. So I still have a task to do and notice, like, what is the problem? Are they most vulnerable? Are they losing their husband? I mean, men die quickly more than men. I don't know. So we are going back to research more about this, and we will publish and post on our social media, and we can get more insight on this. But before going to your question again, about the government role, I was a bit quickly on it. So I said the government role is so effectively, and I would like to appreciate the role of our ministry, Dr. Gwajima, as the late speaker. She said, like, we are blessed with female leaders in every position. Out of having our president, Mama Samia, we have female leaders in almost all of the ministry. So we have, in the ministry that deals with women, elderly, and children, we have female also. So we can also observe some of the government role, even without doing in-depth research. So we have this free health service that's being given to older women's and men's, but also we have older people forums that are legally known. They're existing in the national-wise, locally, district, and even in lower level authority. So we have representative, and those are older people forum. But recently we commemorate a lot these older people celebration, including last week we had World Elder Awareness Day, and our ministry was there, and everywhere in the social media was all about the day. So when it comes to government role in Tanzania, it's played its role effectively, but our role yet being finished. So let me get back to your question. Yes. Young people should be fully involved, because they are the ones who are involved on making some of the mistakes and neglect these older people. So young people should be involved in every activity, and they should make sure, like, they are the one who advocate on issues of older people. And younger people, they are energetic, they are the use of social media, they are good they're energetic, innovative, and the most use of social media. So when we involve them in advocacy, that means it's easier to reach out everywhere. So for us, we work with younger people through the platform of social media, and we reach out this aged population to do several activities. We help them in different ways. We have some health-related projects. We have issues on food and nutrition. We promote hygiene, and hygiene was there even before the pandemic started. So we always have this hygiene project, and even before pandemic. And good enough, during the first wave of pandemic, we got funds from Elders Tanzania. We are so happy on it, and we implement one of the projects in Arusha. Now it's based on promoting hygiene toward older people. So younger people were there, and this combination between young and old, it's make a perfect match, because young, we are more of social media. We know a lot on social media and those stuff, but older people, at least they are still looking forward to be more close to us. So When you connect the dots between younger people and old people, we make it perfect.
Thank you, Sarah. Well said. And that question will be the last one for the panel. So does anyone else want to add a comment around why it's important for younger people to be part of the discussions and activities and calls for change? So does anyone want to add anything briefly before we close this session?
Absolutely. So if you want to age well, you have to be in that space where older people can share their experience. So as a younger person, you're learning about the challenges of aging. You're learning about how the older adults are coping with those challenges, and that will help you prepare yourself to actually age better. So the younger people really should get into that conversation to be able to learn about aging, understand it, imbibe it, and be advocates, like Sarah has mentioned, so that when they are actually at that stage, they have a better experience. A society that allows that connection, that intergenerational connection, would not be missing out on the older adults sharing history, culture, skills for showing empathy, with the younger ones. And that way we'll be securing our past, our present, and the future. Thank you.
Francis or Rihanna, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would definitely say that having young and old interactions is very important. I think especially as a young person, we can be quite rival, quite provocative in a sense of telling an older person when they're going wrong. And I think that's very important as well as the older people telling us when we are going wrong, because that's how we will learn from each other, and being able to take on these criticisms and then developing further solutions as to, okay, I am going wrong, so how do I make this right? If, let's say, a young person is working on older people initiatives or actions or policies, don't think that you know what you know. Include older people in the discussion. If you're working on an older person policy, why are you not having an older person on the forefront consulting with you hand to hand? Is what causes a problem, especially with young people as well. If we have a young person's report, why don't we have young people at the forefront telling you what the causes are, telling you what the solutions are? This is how we grow. This is how we brew innovation. And this is how we break generational norms. And I think it's very important to do so, because we can't continue recycling the same actions, the same ideas, the same sort of solutions that we think work when they don't. And us young people will come and will tell you that it doesn't work that way. We need to change it. We need to flip the switch, change the narrative, change the solutions for not just ourselves, because we can't just think of the present, but we need to think about future generations to come. For example, I guess funny intergenerational norm I think that we need to break is cooking. Women, especially older women, they like to take on the kitchen, and you find grandchildren, I have to say it, and you find grandchildren come in and they're like, okay, let me help you out. And you're like, no, let me be the strong woman. I can do this, I can do that. And then you find grandchildren don't know how to cook, don't know how to raise their family, they don't know about periods, they don't know about motherhood or anything. We need to break that stigma, and we need to start addressing and start having these fruitful and honest conversations about issues that surround women in the workplace, in motherhood, in pregnancy, in all areas.
Well said. Thank you. So the future of the Commonwealth depends on the engagement and commitment of people of all ages. Not recognising older people as part of the Commonwealth's core mission means ignoring the vital support older women and men provide to younger generations today, because today's youth are our future aged. This session is a celebration, and I'm so proud that you have all joined us for this very first discussion about intergenerational celebration and positive ageing. And this will not be the last time this will happen, I'm sure of it, especially with Common Age helping to support you all in having these discussions with the Commonwealth, as well as with your organisations as well. Now is the time for you to have discussions tonight at the gala dinner, at your leadership table, in your businesses and your communities. How will you be working towards a Commonwealth that engages, empowers, and actually considers older people and your own future older self? Perhaps now is the time to start thinking, what does ageing well look like for you? And how can you make sure that that happens in your communities today and into the future? We'll now open to questions, so please do raise your hand. Lady in the white jacket.
Hello. Thank you so much. I think my love for the elderly started with my great-grandmother. She lived to be 102, but it's not why I admired her. She survived the concentration camps. When she was 13 years old, she lost her mother and her sisters and other siblings and cousins in the concentration camps, but she started as a 13-year-old child-headed household. Rebuilding her family, and when she had her 102nd birthday, she had more than 100 descendants. So in that inspiration, in my early 20s, I started an orphanage and a place of refuge for destitute people and a home for the elderly that could not be helped. And I really commend what you said in bringing the elderly and the children together. We saw so often that the elderly had no children that supported them, that didn't care, and you could really see the neglect, you could see them losing hope. And by linking them back to the orphans, to the children in the children's home, they found hope again, they found purpose again, by linking back, by inspiring and asking, what did you do, what did you study, how did you progress? And we were able to then link those in business with other business people. We had job creation, job readiness, empowerment, entrepreneurship training, but then you could link those elderly, and I'm a past member as well and mentor on the YALI program, the Young Africa Leaders program, and working with Barack Obama with a Washington Mandela Fellowship in honor of our late President Nelson Mandela. And I've seen the benefit of linking mentors with the youth and empowering them. And my comment today is I want to really ask the Commonwealth to link 1 million elderly with 1 million youth. I mean, we've set targets for empowerment. Let's do the same by getting mentors from the elderly in the Commonwealth that can really step up and mentor young youth. Thanks.
And I love the point that you did raise, our elders. It is a privilege for them to grow old with a family, and not everyone has that privilege. So it's well done on everything that you have achieved and making those connections. We'll go to the middle, the lady in the blue. Yes.
Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Gwanse Elizabeth, President and founder of Any Survivor doing Women and Youth Empowerment. So, I've heard everything you said, but from my background as an African and very conservative African family, grandparents old and die with the grandchildren at home. We take care of our grandchildren, our grandparents. We don't send them to old age houses. That is what keeps them alive for longer ages. An example of another country, but Western country that does that, it's not even Western, Asian, is Japan. They have the longest aging group, and they are always in the houses with their children and their grandchildren. I realized that most grandparents who die, they don't have children around them. They die of loneliness. They die of loneliness. And something that I've appreciated on another Asian country, that's China, because China is very busy, parents are always out, you don't even have a life because you're always working. So what do? If you have to send a child, your grandparent or your father to an old age house, it is obligatory for you to visit your parent at least twice a month. And you must give, it's an obligation, you must give them pocket allowance, at least twice a month when you are visiting them. The fact that you visit your parent or your grandparent in the old age house, he's happy. It's that joy. It's not the fact that people are. It's stressful living where you are not loved by people around you, like genuinely love, that are just taking care of you, turn you, change diapers, and everything. But most of those grandparents live longer, like in China too. They live longer. So I think the Commonwealth needs to work on a program where they can forward to United Nations and all those organizations concerned by using those prototypes like China and Japan with African society. Because where I come from, like in Northwest, it is a taboo. Like me, how can I give birth to you, nurture you, you cry, you are sick, you are dying, I your mother, I'm with you till the very last, and I'm old, you send me to an old age house that I'm disturbing, I have dementia, look for a nurse for me. You send me to an old age house, before I die, there'll be an laboratory for you.
Thank you very much for your comment. We had a person at the back in bright blue and a lovely gold pattern. Oh yes, sorry, before you start, Shirley would like to make a comment.
Sure. I just want to make a comment because I know and value very much how in Africa and other countries you keep your mothers and fathers, but mothers especially, in the home. But I just wanted to say, from my mother's experience, who was 95, that she actually looked after herself in her own apartment for years, and she had regular visitors from us. But finally, she broke her legs and her hip, and we just couldn't manage. We had a trolley in the house to lift her up. My two brothers couldn't change her diapers. And she said to me, it's time. I came back from Rwanda, and she said, it's time for me to go into an older person's home. And she said she would never do it, but she went and she had a wonderful 6 months of extra life because she had all these activities. She learned to cook again, and she did all these fantastic things. So we should, and also I should say that in our country, 80 is the normal age, or the average age that men live to. Women live till they're 85. That is the average age. And that is why women are living so much longer. And so we should be tolerant of each other's relationships with older people. That if we can keep our parents at home as long as we possibly can, of course we can. But we are so fortunate in Australia that we have places where people who can no longer stay in their own home because of huge disability or dementia, which is another problem. My brother's wife had dementia, and she stayed at home while she could, but finally, at the last stages of dementia, people get very angry, and she started to beat her husband, and he had to put her into a home, into a hospital. And it's a terrible thing to have to do, but we have to recognize that as we are getting older in every country, we find that there are more challenges for older people. Challenges with breaks in their hips and their legs, challenges with dementia. And it's fantastic if we can, as younger people, persuade our governments to have policies to deal with that and to change the laws so that that can be dealt with. Thank you. I'm sorry to add, but I thought that was important.
Very quickly, because we have one question we've already gone through, so very quick.
Yes, I think what she mentioned is very important, particularly for the typical African village family. I like to say that in Cameroon, in the Northwest particularly, we looked at the situation of isolation of elderly people, and as you say, the young people go and leave the grandchildren with the grandparents, and they're alone because they cannot move them to care homes. That is not part of the tradition. We engage community-based care of the elderly within their community. This means that The family has to be educated, the community has to be educated to develop interest in these older people. We decided to go quarter by quarter, and they were grouped into social clubs of older persons. These clubs come together 2 times in a month with food, with drink. They have stories to tell, and the clubs are followed up by young people who are volunteers. These volunteers are not selected by us. The volunteers are selected by the elderly based on the trust and the respect the young people have for elders. These are also young people who do not leave the village and go elsewhere. They have an activity within the community. They love elderly people. They love their community. They are settled in place. They are used to traditional rulers. They are used to the elderly. They are used to government services within the subdivision or the district. And they are able to provide a follow-up in an aftermath of a crisis. So this actually bridged the gap. In terms of rehabilitation, rather than...
Sorry, Francis, I'll cut you short here and I'll throw to Rihanna.
Thank you. Okay.
No worries. Yeah, I was just going to add to the lady's contribution. Thank you for your contribution. We should not definitely discredit private care, and we should not discriminate against people who want to take care of their families at their homes, because both cases are fine anyways. But I would say there are private care homes who have provisions for older people in terms of salsa therapy. I've seen in a local care home in Dominica, and we even got things like crafts and, but it's usually with the private care homes. With public, you don't get, well, I don't want to say you don't get, but sometimes you don't, is not provided the kind of level of care that you want to see for your family member. So I would say when you are looking at private care, think of it like buying a new house for yourself. You want a nice house, right? So think about having a home for your family member that will treat them in the way that you want to be treated. Don't just go and shop around, for 2 seconds and say, yep, that's the care home I want for my family member. You need to look at this stuff. You need to look at how they treat their staff. You need to look at how they treat their older people. What social activities are available? What's the kind of audience like, at the care home? You need to look at all aspects of the care home to make sure that you're making a, defined decision, and then that will also put your soul at rest, because no one wants to put someone who they love in a care home and they're just being treated illy. We don't want that for each other. We all have a duty to look after each other and ensure that we have the best quality care possible for everyone, young and old, in this world.
Well said, Rihanna. And we'll just go to this question.
Yeah, no, thank you so much to your panelists. I think it's a fantastic panel. I'm just going to add to the conversation just a few seconds, and then maybe ask a question directly, because the point I want to bring out, it's an intersectional lens about those who are aging. And I'm going to speak about the context of queer community or LGBTI older persons who for the longest time have been invisibilized in communities. And even when we have this conversation, it's going to be even more harder to talk about queer older persons because of the social dynamics, the structural challenges, and the criminalization context of countries they belong in. And I think it's somehow quite an important narrative of this topic that we need to reflect on when we speak about a common future for the common age. How do we ensure that we integrate, we include, and we draw on diversity of older persons across the board? And I wanted to specifically add, I don't think many of the panelists would touch so much on it, but it's for the entire conference to take note of the forgotten LGBTI queer persons in this conversation. The second point The second point I want to raise, Francis, I hope that you are taking your time to mentor young men and boys, to become the person you are, because Cameroon can do better, to take care of the people and see people for who they are, because of the dynamics where generally human rights violation in a very consistent manner continue. But I'm very much inspired by the work that you do. But I'm quite interested to your panelists, and anyone can answer this question around the multiple vulnerabilities that elderly people experience. I come from a country which has a very vibrant, amazing constitution, but we have social issues, challenges, gender-based violence, unequal society that we live in. We are faced with these social and structural barriers. And I hear, and I was listening carefully around the intergenerational context of aging and celebration of our elderly people. My great-grandmother died when she was 106. So it's quite important. So I come from a generation or a family that really lives a little bit longer. And I'm quite fascinated that our geographic location, our class, age, all of these categories, because they differ. And we need to take this into consideration when we speak about the common age. These categories that elderly or older persons experience, the multiple vulnerability, so that when we really meaningfully speak about the care and needs of elderly persons, we must not only just look at it from just an aspect that does not address the social and structural dynamic. And the last point, which I was fascinated by what our elder was raising there, at 82, I'm so inspired by the point you kept on saying to us earlier, I still want to be involved, I still want to be seen and be respected for that matter. And I think that's a philosophy that we understand as Africans or as persons, just by virtue of being human, right? But I want to say it's quite important for us to realize at what point have we cut the elderly person's economic power and freedom, so that we speak about the social protection and economic protection of elderly people, because then they become dependents. And we have not actually spoken about a policy that replaces their social protection. Thank you.
Wonderful comments, and thank you so much. I'll throw to Dr. OG first, and then possibly Ken, who's in the audience.
Right. Thanks. Just going back to that conversation about so we prefer to refer to them as residential facilities. And really part of healthy aging or active aging is that we give autonomy of decision making to older adults. So there are older adults that I've met who just want to be in an environment where they can engage with their peers. There's a residential facility in Lagos where I met this woman. She can do everything for herself. She just didn't want to live with her daughter. So she came into this residential facility. You see her every morning, she's all well dressed. She's, even volunteering to take care of those who are not as able as she is. So we must respect that, the decision of older adults to want to be where they want to be, when they want to be. There are older adults with multiple frailty, multiple vulnerabilities that family members cannot cater to. They will be better served in skilled facilities where, especially those at the end of the spectrum of dementia, it's harrowing for any family member to see your loved one become a shadow of themselves. I had a patient who every night the wife will go into hiding because the husband will go into this agitative state and say, "You're here again to steal my money," because he didn't recognize her. All he saw in that individual was this person who has come to infringe on my private space. So there are older adults who definitely are better served in skilled facilities. What countries must do, and all of us should make sure that the regulatory guidelines that are well set out for these care facilities, and there is routine monitoring and evaluation of their services to make sure that they actually meet the requirement to ensure that these older adults are not, that their freedom and they're not being abused, because that's the other thing. In the homes, some of these older adults are neglected. I have people who are left alone 6 to 8 hours a day. The woman is worn a diaper, maybe they tell a neighbor to go feed her at some point in time during the day. That is neglect, that is abuse. So we must start thinking of putting structures in place. We cannot sit on that horse of where Africans, we never send our own to homes. We do have African older adults who will be better served in skilled facilities. We just need to make sure that we protect them with appropriate guidelines.
And as you also certainly raised in your comment, was that we are definitely being very broad in our definition of older adults as all people and women who are over the age of 60. And of course, there are so many intersectionalities within that, including the LGBTI community. And one of the things is that ensuring that our communities understand the vulnerabilities of these communities, as well as the Commonwealth supports these communities, and we as individuals support our loved ones who are in this, who identify as LGBTI as well as they age. So there's lots of things for us to consider with multiple sectionalities. Ken, I know that you wanted to say something.
Is this on? Great. Thank you so much. And this has just been such an inspirational panel for me. And this discussion and the comments that are coming from the audience. And Dr. Ogura, you pointed to one of the points, the issues I wanted to raise. But for me, the common thread throughout all the discussions we've been having, all the experiences that you've demonstrated, and what we really need to take forward as a Commonwealth is the thread of dignity and respect and choice. And it's about making sure that we all together are allowing ourselves the opportunity to continue to be treated with that dignity and respect. And sometimes that means making sure that the state is there to provide that support in the same way that we would expect that support to come to us as a child. We have to make sure that we also get the social protection we need in later life. And that comes from our families, and it comes from our communities, but it also comes from our institutions. So I just want to congratulate everybody in this room for being here, because you are part of this historic moment where this is the first conversation we've been having on this. And just to remember that fundamentally this is about human rights. And we have to really strive to make sure that our human rights as people, as we get older, are protected. And there is one more step to take on this, which is we need a UN convention on the rights of older persons. We're not there yet, but hopefully we will get there soon. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll take one quick question or comment before we close and go for the gala. So, lovely lady in the second row, just over here. And then that will be the last comment. And do feel free to come up and speak to our panellists after this if you need further discussions or comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much. I really feel privileged to be given an opportunity to speak.
Please hold the microphone a bit closer to you.
Yes, I'm Stembiso Nyoni from Zimbabwe. I'm the Minister of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprises in Zimbabwe. There are two things that are certain to every living person. That is aging and death. It is therefore very important for us to respect this journey, whoever or wherever we are. In Zimbabwe, we have started what we call bridging the digital and generational gap, because it is estimated that in about 10 to 20 years' time, most of the jobs will be digital. So if our young people and our elderly have to continue to relate, we have to make sure we bridge both gaps. I am the last of 8 children in my family, and I had the pleasure of looking after my aging parents. There is a certain joy that you get by doing that no other situation can give you. So it is important for us as Africans to continue, or as human beings, to continue that culture. But I really want to thank the panelists, especially for emphasizing the need for the young people to take care of the elderly. And also to have platforms where the elderly will go and tell stories to the young people. That connection is very, very important. We started this program in Zimbabwe because we have a lot of professionals that are retiring, and they are lonely, and a lot of wealth that they accumulated is being wasted. It's not being used. But we need to create platforms where we bring them back into communities. Some of them are healthy, but they are just over 65, where society says, after this age, you are too old to work. But they can contribute so much to communities. So I really want to support our panelists. I was listening very carefully. Every one of them really educated us today. If we could take home the importance of living together, appreciating each other, and then knowing that each generation has something to contribute for the now. There is nobody that is irrelevant in the now. We need our history. We also need the future that comes with the new generation. So together, we are able to transform our society. Let me end by saying, we can never overemphasize the need to take care of our aged at grassroots level. Because remember, these were the women who were fetching water for everybody, fetching firewood for everybody, doing agriculture, producing food for everybody. All of a sudden, they can't do that for themselves. And there is nobody to do those things for them. You can imagine the situation they go through. And I think that we really need to revive our culture so that we take care of each other, the younger and the aged, so that we build holistic societies. I want to thank the panelists. It was very, very enriching, and I think it's going to enrich my program when I go back home. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very well said. And I love how you said we need our history and we need our future. Please join me with a huge round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much for all that you have shared. And now please join us all at the gala, and we would love to have you come and join us and ask any questions as well if you'd like to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Kenny. You're so great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just amazing.